What if the richest chapter of Jin's story has nothing to do with the microphone? What if the smartest business move of his career started as a joke? And what if, behind the fan chants and the flawless visuals, there's a version of Kim Seokjin that most armies have never really looked at? The version who signs contracts, buys buildings, and bets on brands most idols wouldn't touch. Because here's the question nobody quite asks out loud. If the music stopped tomorrow, would Jin still be one of the wealthiest men to ever come out of a K-pop group? Stick with this one, because by the end, you're going to understand exactly how a restaurant, a fishing hobby, and a handful of luxury logos turned into a financial empire, and which piece of it started as something his own brother almost lost. Let's start with who we're actually talking about. Kim Seokjin, stage name Jin, the oldest member of BTS, the self-declared worldwide handsome, the man behind hits like Epiphany and Super Tuna. For years, the public conversation around Jin's success has orbited entirely around music, album sales, chart records, sold-out stadiums. And that conversation isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. Because somewhere in the last several years, quietly, almost playfully, Jin built something else, a second engine of wealth that doesn't depend on a single music chart. Restaurants, real estate, a wall of global brand deals that reads like a luxury directory. And at the center of almost all of it is something ARMY already knows well. Jin doesn't plan to be impressive, he just is, and the world eventually catches up. This matters to ARMY for a reason that goes beyond curiosity. BTS's 7 members are frequently treated, fairly or not, as a single financial unit, as if success for one automatically means success for all. But Jin's path shows something different. It shows an individual member building an entirely personal portfolio, member by decision, deal by deal, years before the group even reunited as 7. Understanding that path means understanding Jin not just as a performer, but as a strategist. So where does the story actually begin? Not with a brand deal, not with an apartment. It begins with food and family. Long before worldwide handsome became a global phenomenon, Kim Seokjin was by his own reputation within BTS, the group's resident foodie. His fellow members have said as much on live stream after live stream. He hosted a cooking series for fans called Jin's Cooking Diary. He ran a mukbang-style segment called Eat Jin, turning the simple act of eating into something ARMY looked forward to every week. So in 2018, when word spread that Jin had quietly opened a restaurant in Seoul, it didn't feel like a business headline. It felt like something built directly out of who he already was. The restaurant was called Osu Seramushi, a Japanese eatery specializing in seramushi, a traditional steaming technique using wooden steamer baskets to cook meat, seafood, and vegetables while locking in flavor and moisture. It opened near Seokjin Lake and Lotte World in Seoul. And it wasn't a solo venture. Jin opened it together with his older brother, Kim Seokjin. Here's where the structure gets interesting. Kim Seokjin is listed as the restaurant's official owner and CEO. Jin, meanwhile, holds the position of director. That distinction matters. It means Jin wasn't simply lending his fame to a family project and stepping back. He held an actual operational stake while deliberately keeping day-to-day control inside the family, away from the spotlight that follows him everywhere else. For a while, that arrangement worked exactly as intended. Fans discovered the restaurant only months after it opened, not because Jin promoted it, but because word spread organically among ARMY who wanted to eat where worldwide handsome himself might occasionally walk through the door. But quiet family businesses don't stay protected from global crises, and in 2020, this one very nearly didn't survive. In 2020, Jin did something he rarely does in public. He talked about money and worry in the same breath. Speaking about his brother's restaurant during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Jin said in comments reported by Korean and international outlets at the time that his older brother was struggling badly. He described talking to his brother regularly about the difficulties the business was facing. And then came the detail that stopped a lot of fans mid-scroll. Jin revealed his brother had sold his own car just to keep the restaurant afloat. Think about that for a second. This wasn't a story about an idol's investment portfolio taking a hit. This was a family watching something they built together nearly collapse, with one of the most famous entertainers on the planet unable to simply wave it away, because the whole point of the arrangement was that his brother ran it, and ran it for real. The restaurant made it through. By 2021, it was still open, still earning strong reviews from visitors, even though Jin himself was rarely seen there in person, a deliberate choice most likely, to keep the spotlight from overwhelming a business that was never designed to be a fan attraction in the first place. That single story tells you something that will matter for everything else in this video. Jin's approach to money was never about splashy, attention-grabbing bets. It was about control, family, and things he could either oversee directly or connect meaningfully to who he actually is. Keep that principle in your head. It's about to show up again and again, just at a much, much larger scale. Because the next chapter of this story doesn't start in a restaurant, it starts with a departure. In December 2022, Jin did something none of his 6 bandmates had done yet. He enlisted for South Korea's mandatory military service, first among all of BTS. For 18 months, the man fortune list brands wanted photographed in campaign after campaign disappeared from the endorsement world entirely. No new contracts, no Fashion Week appearances. Just service. Then, in June 2024, he was discharged. And what happened next wasn't a slow re-entry, it was an avalanche. Within weeks of returning to civilian life, Jin signed with French jewelry house Fred as its first ever global brand ambassador, the very first solo luxury deal of his career. Fred's artistic director praised what she called his radiant energy and unwavering optimism. Fans reacted instantly. Pieces from Fred's Force 10 collection, including a bracelet priced above $27,000, reportedly sold out within 2 hours of the announcement. But this is only the beginning of what his post-military calendar would look like. Because a month later, in August 2024, one of the biggest fashion houses on earth came calling. Gucci named Jin its newest global brand ambassador. Creative director Sabato De Sarno described him as a generous and extraordinary artist who was able to move people with his music. But the deal itself had nothing to do with music at all. It was about image, influence, and the specific kind of cultural gravity Jin carries even in complete silence. That gravity showed up in numbers almost immediately. When Jin appeared at Gucci's Spring-Summer 2025 menswear show in Milan, the jacket and trousers he wore, retailing near $3,600 each, sold out across the United States within hours, reportedly causing enough traffic to strain Gucci's own website. And Milan wasn't a one-time spike. It became a pattern. A year later, in September 2025, Jin returned to Milan for Gucci's Spring-Summer 2026 showcase, an event called The Tiger at Palazzo Mezzanate. This time, the reaction wasn't just fashion chatter, it was a measurable spike in global attention. Jin and Gucci became the #1 related search topic worldwide on Google Trends during that week. Within 24 hours of his appearance, he generated more than 1 million posts about himself on X. Industry estimates place the media value generated by that single appearance at roughly $9.7 million. Let that sit for a moment. One outfit, one evening, nearly $10 million in estimated media value without a single new song being released. But Gucci wasn't operating alone in this new chapter. Barely a month after the Gucci announcement, in September 2024, Korean beauty brand Laneige named Jin its first ever male brand ambassador, a genuinely notable milestone for a company that had built its global image almost entirely around female faces. Jin fronted a campaign for Laneige's best-selling cream skin toner and moisturizer, a product already known for having one of the highest repurchase rates in the brand's entire lineup. "I'm thrilled to start my beauty journey with Laneige," Jin said at the time. Then came Alo Yoga in October 2024, folding Jin into the athleisure and wellness space, a category almost no K-pop idol had entered as a lead ambassador before him. Notice what's happening here. In the span of about 3 months after his military discharge, Jin didn't sign one deal, he signed 4: jewelry, high fashion, skincare, and athletic wear across 4 completely different industries, each one chosen with enough precision that none of them cannibalized the others. This wasn't a scattergun approach, it was portfolio thinking dressed up as a comeback tour. And here's where the story loops back to something we mentioned earlier: food. Because before Jin ever enlisted, back in November 2022, one final partnership snuck in just under the wire. Korean food company Ottogi launched a ramen product literally named after him, Jin Ramen. Not Jin endorsing an existing ramen, a product carrying his own stage name on the packaging, sold on Korean shelves to anyone, army or not, who simply wanted a bowl of noodles. Think about what that represents. Most brand deals rent an idol's face for a season. This one put his identity permanently into a product line. It's a small detail, easy to skip past, but it's also one of the clearest signs of just how far Jin's personal brand had already traveled, even before the wave of luxury deals that came after his discharge. Which brings us to the story that more than any other proves Jin's financial instincts might be sharper than anyone gave him credit for. It starts, of all places, with a fish. Back on December 4th, 2021, as a birthday gift to ARMY, Jin dropped a song that nobody asked for and nobody expected to matter. It was called Super Tuna. 1 minute long, written and produced by Jin himself alongside longtime collaborator Bumzu, inspired by nothing more strategic than Jin's genuine, well-known love of fishing. It wasn't released through any major distribution push. It didn't need one. The choreography video, Jin's hands pressed together to mimic a fish fin, spread across TikTok like a wildfire nobody could contain. Covers piled up by the hundreds. The choreography video alone has drawn more than 76 million views on YouTube, with total viewership across versions of the song climbing past 100 million. Jin reportedly asked, only half joking, that the song not become too popular. It became a phenomenon anyway. For years, Super Tuna existed purely as fandom lore, a funny, beloved footnote in Jin's solo catalog, until July 2025, when Dongwon F&B, the company behind South Korea's best-known canned tuna brand and the #1 seller in the entire U.S. canned tuna market, announced something almost too perfect to be real. Jin was now the face of Dongwon Tuna. The campaign leaned directly into the joke's own history. The teaser video used Super Tuna as its soundtrack. Dongwon released a limited BTS Jin edition of tuna cans, featuring his photo and collectible stickers. What began as a light-hearted birthday gift to fans had, 4 years later, become an actual product endorsement, tied to a food company selling hundreds of millions of cans a year. But this is the part most people don't know. By that point, Jin had already become the ambassador for more brands than any other member of BTS, reportedly holding 10 separate global or regional ambassador roles at once, spanning fashion, beauty, food, and technology. Samsung had listed him alongside bandmate Suga as part of its Galaxy campaign since as early as March 2020. In September 2025, Jin expanded into Japan as global ambassador ambassador for haircare brand Lucido L, part of the Mandem Corporation, a deal significant enough that the parent company's stock reportedly climbed to a 52-week high, rising more than 78% over the following year. Read that number again. A single ambassador announcement, and the parent company's stock surged nearly 80% within a year. That's not typical influencer marketing. That's the kind of market reaction usually reserved for product launches or earnings surprises, not a celebrity photo campaign. So what actually connects a Tuna song, a skincare brand, a jewelry house, and a Japanese hair care line? On the surface, nothing, but look closer and there's a consistent thread running underneath every single deal Jin has signed since his discharge. Authenticity that can't be manufactured. He didn't chase the Tuna deal, the Tuna company chased him because the joke was already real 4 years before they showed up. He didn't force his way into skincare. Laneige built an entire first male ambassador narrative because his image already carried that kind of trust. That's the same instinct that shaped the restaurant back in 2018. Build something real, connected to who you actually are, and let the value follow naturally instead of forcing it. And if that instinct works for songs and skincare, it turns out it works even better for something far bigger: property. Here's a fact that surprises a lot of people who assume idols simply spend what they earn. Since 2019, Jin has quietly built one of the more disciplined real estate portfolios in Korean entertainment, and he did it almost entirely without headlines until the numbers became too large to ignore. In July 2019, Jin purchased a unit at Hanam The Hill, a luxury residential complex in Seoul's Yongsan district long associated with business elites, top executives, and major entertainment figures. The unit measured 233 square meters. The price, 4.49 billion won. 4 months later, in November 2019, he bought a second unit in the same complex, 206 square meters, for 4.27 billion won. At the time, these purchases were reported quietly, mostly as real estate curiosities. Nobody was calling Jin an investor yet. Then in June 2025, Jin returned to Hanam The Hill for a third time. This purchase was bigger than the first two combined, a 243.201 square meter unit priced at 17.5 billion won, roughly $12.7 million. And here's the detail that turned heads across Korean financial media. He paid for the entire thing in cash. No mortgage, no financing, just a direct, full transaction for one of the most expensive residential units in the country. 3 purchases, 6 years, no debt on record for any of them. But the real twist to this story didn't happen in 2025. It happened just weeks before this very video was made. In August 2026, court registry documents revealed that Jin had sold that very first unit, the one he bought back in July 2019 for 4.49 billion won, for 12.7 billion won. After nearly 7 years of holding it, his realized gain came to more than 8.2 billion won, somewhere in the range of $8.8 million on a single apartment. Sit with that timeline for a second. A 20-something idol, still active in one of the biggest groups on the planet, quietly bought an apartment in 2019 with cash. He held it patiently through a pandemic, through military enlistment, through 18 months completely out of public life. And when he finally sold it, nearly 7 years later, he walked away with a profit larger than most people will earn across an entire career. This is the open loop we promised to close. Is Jin secretly one of the more successful individual investors to ever come out of K-pop? Based purely on the verified numbers, the answer looks like yes. Not through reckless bets, not through chasing trends, through the same quiet, patient philosophy that shaped a restaurant back in 2018. Pick something solid, hold it, protect it, and let time do the rest of the work. And that brings us back full circle to his brother. Because here's the moment that, more than any brand deal or apartment sale, says the most about who Jin actually is with his money. In 2020, at the lowest point of the pandemic, Jin didn't respond to his brother's struggling restaurant with a press release or a rescue investment announced to the world. He responded the way any older sibling, famous or not, might respond. He He worried out loud. He talked to his brother regularly. He watched someone he loved sell his own car just to protect something they'd built together. That restaurant is still standing today, quietly, without fanfare, the same way it opened in 2018. Everything else in this video, the Gucci contracts, the Hanam the Hill apartments, the tuna cans on supermarket shelves, all of it sits on top of that same foundation, not ambition for its own sake, something closer to loyalty, patience, and a refusal to let the people and things that matter to him quietly fall apart. So, where does that leave the question we opened with, whether Jin's story would still hold up if the music disappeared tomorrow? By now, the answer isn't really in doubt. A restaurant that survived a pandemic because a family refused to let it fail. A portfolio of apartments bought in cash and held with a patience most investors twice his age don't manage. A joke of a song that turned into an actual seat at the table of one of Korea's biggest food companies. And a run of luxury and beauty contracts, Gucci, Fred, Laneige, Alo Yoga, signed in the span of months, each one chosen with a precision that looks less like luck and more like strategy. None of it required a single new chart record. To be fair, this isn't a story without its own quiet tensions. Some fans have pointed out that stacking 10 or more ambassador roles at once risks stretching any public figure thin or diluting what each individual brand deal actually means. Others argue the opposite, that Jin's willingness to represent something as ordinary as canned tuna, right alongside a nearly $100,000 jewelry collection, is exactly what makes him different from a typical luxury ambassador. Both readings have some truth in them. What isn't in dispute is the underlying pattern, real assets, real revenue, and very little of it built on hype alone. What this video hasn't tried to do is put a single dollar figure on Jin's total fortune. You'll find plenty of channels willing to throw out a confident-sounding net worth number. Most of those figures are estimates, guesses stacked on guesses, and treating them as fact would be doing exactly what this channel promises never to do, trading accuracy for a bigger headline. What we can say, based on what's actually verifiable, is this. Kim Seokjin built a second career almost nobody was watching closely, running quietly alongside the one that made him famous in the first place. A director's chair at a family restaurant, a stack of real estate decisions that would make seasoned investors nod in approval, a closet full of ambassador titles spanning fashion, beauty, food, and tech. And underneath every single piece of it, the same instinct that's defined him since his earliest days in BTS. Do it your own way, take care of the people around you, and let the results speak for themselves. If there's one thing to take from this, it's probably not go invest in real estate or start a restaurant with your brother. It's something simpler. The things that last, the businesses, the bonds, the reputations, are rarely the loudest ones in the room. If this kind of deep dive into what happens behind the stage lights is something you want more of, you know where to find us. Until then, take care of the people who sold their car for you, too.